Now, hello again. President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa has called for unity among African countries to assist each other in bettering the lives of their citizens. He was speaking at the St. Petersburg summit aimed at strengthening ties between Russia and the African continent. Our correspondent Isabel Nakirya is joining us live now from St. Petersburg. We spoke to her yesterday. Just get a sense, Isabel, good afternoon. Welcome to today here on eNCA again. This is supposed to be the second and the final day of this summit. Overall, how has it been going so far? We've heard some of the speeches a little bit earlier, including from our president here, Ramaphosa.
Yes, you're right. Today is the last day of the summit, and today a number of cooperation agreements will be signed at the end of the day, but some of them have already been signed, and Russia has promised a number of developments to Africa. The first is easing the debt burden of Africa by $23 billion. It wants Africa to trade with Africa to flow smoothly, and on that note, it's sending $90 million to Africa for development aid. It's also promised to increase agriculture supplies to Africa, as well as an uninterrupted flow of food supplies to Africa. Last week, we had President Putin saying he's capable of sending more than enough grain to Africa, and of course, surpassing what Ukraine was saying. The UN Secretary General has hit back at Russia, saying that the handful of grains that it's sending to Africa cannot outdo, it cannot outdo what has already happened in Africa, the food crisis in Africa. We also heard from President Ramaphosa, who led the peace initiative to meet President Putin on Ukraine, and President Putin said he's attentively listening to African leaders on the peace initiative and considering their views on ending the conflict in Ukraine. African leaders would like President Putin to settle the conflict with Ukraine in a peaceful way, and they are asking that President Putin stops the war and they go down on the table for discussions, because war, conflicts cause disasters, including causing food crisis like what is happening in Africa. And of course, with the donations of over 50 million tons of food already going to 6 African countries. We also heard that the Russia and Africa will develop a single trading company that will ease the flow of goods between the two nations and allow Russian companies to invest in Africa, and some African companies can as well come to Russia and invest here, and they will be treated the same. At the end of the day, there will be a number of cooperation agreements, including food security, in fighting terrorism, and nuclear energy, agriculture, education, and IT.
Reports that not reports, rather, Isabel. President Ramaphosa speaking about a plan of action, an Africa-Russia plan of action that's been discussed. But he made the point that it needs to be aligned with the 10-year implementation plan of the African Union's Agenda 2063. Any ideas what this action plan might look like? Will it be focusing around the issues you've just mentioned, investment, trade, security, and so on?
The action plan has not yet been mentioned, but we expect that to come out in the cooperation agreements that will be signed later today. But we do know that President Putin has met with the African Union chairman yesterday, I think, and they discussed further areas of cooperation. In peace and security, President Putin said he's paying attention to the situation in Niger, and he's concerned about what's happening there, and promised that he can offer, a mediation in the warring parties there, though some countries think that African problems can best be dealt with by African people, and that is internal, and other foreign countries should not interfere in matters of sovereignty in Africa.
Okay, thank you very much, Isabel Nakirya, talking to us there live from St. Petersburg, the venue of this latest summit between Russia and Africa. It's in fact the second such summit since 2019. Some 17 African heads of state attending it. And as you've heard there, there's issues around trade and investment, but there's also this issue of the war between Russia and Ukraine. And we know that a few weeks ago, President Ramaphosa led a delegation of African leaders to try and broker a peace deal between the two, but it has not succeeded. And of course, we know what the impact that has been in terms of the crucial grain exports. Let's get some analysis.